The cruise phase of your combat sortie is anything but boring. Not only do you still need to aviate, navigate, and communicate, there are a lot of crucial tasks that you need to do to make sure that your aircraft is running smoothly, that you have enough fuel, that you're going in the right direction, and you're staying in formation and communicating with your wingman. But you also have to manage complex systems to get the most out of your aircraft during combat. In this episode 4, I'll share with you what I've learned over the years that has helped me stay competitive in the combat environment. I'll reinforce all the previous tips that I've shared, but I'll also dig deep into the use and operation of the Supercharger in the P-51 Mustang. I'd like to remind you that I'm not an expert at any of this, but I'll share some links to some real-world documents that you can use to grasp some of the performance data that is available to you so you can manage your engine at altitude a lot better. This episode gives you, the viewer, an opportunity to share what you've learned over the years that helps make the community stronger. Ultimately, I hope this encourages you to dig into the books and take some time to practice this before you try to employ this in combat. As I've mentioned before, don't be afraid to make mistakes. The more you practice, the better you get with time. I hope you enjoy the show. Guys, so before we get into the cockpit and go flying, I want to just cover a few slides and talk about a few things that are unique to this phase of the flight, different than some of the other things that you'll do during the climb and the descent and all the other things that you would do in normal flight to manage the engine as far as RPM and manifold pressure is concerned, are mostly going to be related to your management of the Merlin engine and how it works at altitude and your supercharger, and some of the things that you'll have to do or you can do manually to optimize that. But for the most part, you're going to use it in automatic mode, along with touching on what you need to do to get your weapon systems ready for combat and also to keep the ice from plugging up your ports. Focus on managing your engine, your RPM, and your manifold pressure with the supercharger engaged to get the best performance out of your airplane. But let's talk about that real quick. So here is a side view of the Packard Merlin V1650, and it has the two-stage supercharger mounted to the right side over there. You can see down at the bottom it says supercharger here. If you look at this orientation right here, the left side, you see that spindle coming out. That's where the propeller mounts to. That's the propeller shaft, I should say, power end of it. So if you were looking at the airplane right now with this inside of it, the airplane would be facing to your left, flying to your left. Now, I'm going to go through 3 different guides for this supercharger, but you'll see that they're pretty much identical as far as what they say. Now, I picked Chuck's guide, friend of the channel's here, and a really decent guy. I consider him one of the premier World War II ambassadors for DCS and the DCS community. And Chuck's guide is probably the best for a quick read when you're looking up something. It's a great quick reference. In the supercharger section of the Chuck's guide, and I will put a link to his Chuck's guide's webpage in the description, so just pop on down there if you want to see it. But he goes in and explains it quite a bit, and then he actually has some really good pictures, which are a little bit better than the ED manual, and we'll touch on that in a second. In the manual, it says leave it in automatic mode, and then the only time you would use it in low blower, in the middle switching right there, in the center picture where it says supercharger manual, if you put it in the middle position, like over here, it's in low blower mode manual. If you pull it up to the middle position on the switch, then the light will go out and you will notice the RPM drop, and that's how you cruise around at altitude and save fuel, because if you have it down automatically, the aneroid sensor that's in the supercharger is what triggers it. Altitude air pressure is different at different altitudes, mostly because of temperature. with the temperature layer, which adjusts the pressure. So if the airplane is triggered, the aneroid is set to trigger at about 14,500 feet pressure altitude, and that's why you're seeing the light come on at different times, is because the missions are different. And if this is true to DCS, this is an excellent atmospheric modeling thing that DCS is doing right now. So without delaying further, let's go ahead and go through the slides. So this is out of the DCS manual that you can find in your, not in your save games, but in your game files. If you go to Mods Aircraft P-51 Mustang Doc, then you'll see the English and Russian manual there. This is the P-51 manual that you can also get from your computer files. And again, here it basically says that you know, normal supercharger operation is kept in the automatic mode. See over here, right on the right page, and it's controlled by an aneroid type pressure switch. The aneroid is like a little accordion, and it's got a sealed amount of air in it that allows it to expand and contract with temperature and pressure differences in the atmosphere, and that is basically what triggers the supercharger to work when it needs it and stuff. So it right here, you can read that. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is from the P-51D5 manual that came out on April 5th, 1944. I'll also put a link where you can download this. It's a really good read. It pretty much replicates what you see in the Truck's Guide and what you see in the ED manual. But again, you'll see where it says the Dash 3 engine cuts in at 19,000 feet, whereas the Dash 7 cuts in from 14,500 up to 19,500. And again, that range is depending on the amount of RAM air pressure that you're getting in based on the atmospheric temperatures and whether, if you're in a high pressure or low pressure. There's a lot of stuff in there, and you really don't have to worry about it because you're just going to leave it in auto. The only time you're going to come out of auto is to go to low in the middle when you're cruising and you want to save some gas and you want to lower the RPMs and everything. So, and then the other thing you can use this for, in the high, you see the high switch there, and if you go and click on it, you open up that cover, and I'll show you here in the video. If you click on that and push it up, it's spring loaded. So when you release your switch, it's gonna, when you release your mouse, it's gonna switch back down to the middle. And the reason is that you test it. That high test is for on the ground, just to test the operation of the switch of the supercharger and the blower. So that's the only reason you would do that. But before we jump in the airplane, let's look at one more thing. I'm going to share a short video that I got from Flight Insight, and I'll put a link to his video where you can go learn more about air pressure and density. And then I'll see you at the end of this video.
Temperature affects air density. Cold air has less energy and the molecules don't move around much, so group together. As air temperature increases, molecules start moving around and bouncing off each other, spreading out and making the air less dense. Aircraft performance is poorer in hotter temperatures. Weather affects air density. A high pressure system brings cool air from up high and pulls it down toward the surface, compacting air down there. A low pressure system sucks air from the surface upwards, leaving the surface with lower density. Aircraft performance is poorer in a lower atmospheric pressure. Water vapor in the air, or air humidity, also plays a role in performance. More humid air is less dense and worse for performance, but we're going to ignore that in the discussion of pressure and density altitude.
Okay, so here we are in the cockpit right now, and we are at altitude. We are currently at about 25,400 feet, and I wanted to cover only the basics you need to know at altitude, because there's other things that are going to be covered in different phases of the flight, like on the climb out and the descent, that you'll have to manage then. And this is to complement you taking time to reading in the manual and stuff, getting some information from the manual. So let's go ahead and center the ball here and we'll get going. So one of the things you'll start doing as soon as you take off is managing your fuel, and you'll manage your fuel throughout the whole flight. Now, as Reflected Simulation says, the best practice to do, as soon as you take off, you'll want to make sure that you switch to your center fuselage tank. And that is down there on the fuel selector. It's the one that points straight down back at you. Once that's empty, then you'll switch to one of your combat tanks, and I like to run it about halfway dry so I don't have a lot of imbalance out on the wing. If you look at on the aircraft right now, I've got 2 wing tanks. I like to run that about halfway, so I'll run it for about 20 minutes, and then I'll switch over to the other tank, the other fuel tank, I should say. and I'll just do that with my little selector switch, but you can do it manually down there with your mouse and put it on the right-hand combat tank, and I'll run that one for 30 minutes or so, until it starts sputtering. Once it starts sputtering, I will know to switch back over to the right hand or the other opposite tank, the left hand or right hand, and once I switch that and it starts sputtering, then I'll switch to the left main tank. But once those tanks are empty, you're going to have a way to punch it. Now, there's two different ways you can do it in the Mustang. One of the ways you can do it is you can go over here and jettison or salvo them in with these red handles that are over here below the RPM, the RPM control, the propeller control, and the throttle quadrant. You can do that, or you can simply go down here to your bomb settings, put it on right there. You hit your 5-way switch twice to get it both. And then all you do is push your pickle button on your joystick. That's your, it's usually joystick button 2. And what it does is it'll punch them off at the same time. And so you'll want to make sure that you have either that mapped or you have your jettison map. Once that's done, you can go ahead and bring this back up to the safe position in the middle, and you're good to go on that. Now, for this next demonstration on the Supercharger, I'm going to go ahead and put it on active pause brake. So now the airplane's just holding steady, but we still have all of the engine sounds and everything, all the functions still work. Okay, so the Supercharger is one of those things where you want it to work when you want it to work, but you don't want it on high blower when you're trying to save gas. And I know you guys will correct me if I'm wrong on this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Supercharger, and if you guys can see over here on the left side of the cockpit down below the altimeter, I'll try to keep from getting everybody sick here with my head tracking. I'll go ahead and open up that charger. See the thing I'm opening up right there by the yellow light? Look at that amber jewel light. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring that up to the middle position. You see how the light jewel light went out? Now watch this. As I bring it down, you'll see the boost go up. The manifold pressure jumps up and the RPMs increase slightly. And what I'm doing by putting it in the middle position there, and that's what I was talking about in the slideshow, is bringing it up into the middle position, keeps it in low blower, so that I can save gas while I'm just cruising around escorting bombers off my wing or, circling overhead. And then once I need to use that Supercharger in high blower, I'll put it back down into the automatic mode where it says auto there, put it down, and then push the cover close. Now in the real world, that cover should close it and put it in automatic mode. It should just take it down there and everything. So and I don't know if that's modeled correctly. You P51 experts let me know. Now the other function you have with this switch, let's go ahead and open up that cover again. We'll bring it up to this. The other function you have is you have the high blower check. See where it's in high blower? And once you release that, it goes back to the middle position, and that's because it's spring loaded. And the only function for that to hold it in high blower is to test it on the ground. So we'll go ahead and put it back in low blower like that, and we're going to fly around in low blower. So now, what else do I need to think about? Well, you need to think about your lights. If you're going to go fence in, go into the combat area, you're going to turn your lights off and on as needed. Remember, at nighttime you use dim, which is down, and daytime you use up, which is bright. And those are over here by the canopy crank handle on the right side. I'll zoom in over there and see there's the light switches right there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn them off. And then right here, forward of that, these two switches that are just forward of that are your pitot heat and your gun heat. Basically, the forward one is your gun heat and the aft one is your pitot heat. And you'll want both of those on at altitude. And that keeps the gun ports on the outside of the wing from getting clogged with ice. So those are the critical things. And then the other thing, of course, is to manage your temperatures. You'll see that my coolant temp is getting a little high right there, and then also my engine temp is a little high. So I'll go over here and I'll open up the cooler doors for a little bit, and I'll hold those toggle switches forward to open up both doors, and then look at that, immediately it starts to go down. So then I will switch back to automatic mode and just leave it there, and I'll just monitor it as needed. Now you can also control that by controlling your power settings too. So you don't need to get all wrapped around the details of what manifold pressure and RPM you should have set. Those are the two you're going to mostly use. All of the other modes for your manifold pressure and your RPM setting are all going to be based off of time requirements. If you're using war emergency power, you're supposed to only use it for 5 minutes total. And if you're using full maximum power, if you're going to go out and dogfight for more than 15 minutes and everything, you need to realize you need to take a break from that every now and then. So I hope this series is helping everybody. If you guys like it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let us know what you like about it, and always feel free to add into the comments. You guys have knowledge that we'd like to have added in there too. On the next episode, I will talk about the descent phase, and I'll get a couple real pilots to help me out with that. Commercial pilots that have a really cool way that you can calculate your descent angle and your distance that you can use in this. But you know, for me, I like to use the drive and dive, or dive and drive as it's called, to get down. So, but we'll see you guys in the next video. Everybody have a great holiday season, and we'll catch you later.